Morrow. Dr. Morrow, thanks for letting us come in.
I'm glad you came. Always appreciate getting to talk with you.
We start off, as you may know if you've ever heard the program, with asking you if you're 65.
I'm 71 years old, was in February of 1985, this year.
And I believe you told me you were not born in Marshall County, but you've lived here a long time. Were you born in West Kentucky?
I was born in Paducah.
Well,
and
that's mighty nearby, isn't it?
I've lived here since have lived here since 1940.
Well, I believe we'll call you a native.
I've lived here so long I feel like this is home.
Yeah, it must seem like home for now. Now, any particular neighborhood in Paducah? You were Mechanicsburg or Rowlandtown?
I was born, I don't know the name of the street, but it's the first street around the corner going out Broadway and turning in front of the Coca-Cola plant left going toward Lone Oak. First house on the end of the block, but I couldn't tell you the name of the street. Saved my life.
Well, that
neighborhood,
yeah, that's sort of near where Brazelton School was.
Just a block
so
this side.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know exactly. So you're out in the neighborhood of Lone Oak, really?
Well, as a baby, I guess, my parents moved across from what is now Whitehaven, or what was then Whitehaven, on the farm of what is now a tremendous subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
I think the house that we lived in there now is owned by a Sun Democrat reporter. Stackhouse, I think, is his name. He and his mother, I understand, lived there, and then we moved when I was 6 years old up in far end of Lone Oak, where the road divides, one going toward Mayfield on the right, and the other I couldn't tell you where it goes, but
Melbourne, maybe. I'm not
Melbourne,
sure.
There's a road off of there to Melbourne, but there's one just before you get to that, a block or so, that goes out toward a Presbyterian church and out in toward Cunningham, I think it is. And I've forgotten the name of the road there. It's been too long since I've been there.
Well, let's establish a little bit about your genealogy insofar as you know it. Your father's name was?
Robert Bailey Morrow. He is a native of Stewart County, Tennessee, Indian Mound, Tennessee, or Clarksville was his home. He moved with his parents to Paducah when he was 19 years old.
Mm-hmm. And your mother was?
She was, I guess, a native of McCracken County. No, I don't know. They migrated from Georgia, and I'm not real sure. You had her history, but I've forgotten where her home actually was or when they moved to McCracken County. But
of course, she's still living here in Benton.
Yes.
As I remember, she was born in Paducah.
Yeah, but I know at the age of 17 or 18, she was living in McCracken County.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you remember any of the grandparents?
Yes, I remember my stepmother, my mother on my daddy's side burned to death when she was 4 years old, when he was 4 years old. And I remember his daddy and stepmother. They moved from Stewart County when he was 19. He moved with them. And then my mother's daddy and mother, Graveses, were, they lived to be, my grandfather lived till 1927. My grandmother lived till the year I graduated from high school, 1922.
And they had a county named after them.
Yes. Well, I don't know what they had. The county was named after them. They named after the county. I don't know how that worked out.
But one way or the other.
One way or the other.
You then probably went to school at what, Lone Oak?
Lone Oak. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Went to school at Lone Oak.
You know, I can remember going to Lone Oak in, I guess it was 1940. We were debating, and I remember we went from Hardin over there, and the debate coach and the principal, I've forgotten now who it was, whether it was John Robinson or...
That sounds like...
But he might have been there.
I believe he was.
So he took us to the office and showed us that they had an intercom system where you could talk to every classroom, and there was a console in the office. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. I thought we were in Radio City Music Hall, New York.
Well, you see, the schoolhouse burned down in 1927 at Lone Oak, and they built a new building. So they had some up-to-date things, so to speak, that some of the other schools in the county didn't have. See, when he won the state championship in 1929, they didn't even have a gym. They came to Lone Oak and practiced, and that was the only gym in the county except for the one that Tillman had. And, you know, for a long time it was just a very small gym. We had a much larger gym than Tillman because when the school building burned, we got some of the better things, you see.
Yeah. Well, all right. Do you remember any of your teachers, Doc?
Homer Holland, who later moved to Sharp and won the state championship with his Sharp
Green
Devils.
Yeah.
1938, I believe it was. I played basketball for him. And I graduated in 32. He moved up to Sharp and had his winning team in 38. Claude Miller was from Murray, and I think he's still living.
Oh, yes, he is.
And,
he one time, he coached at Hardin in 30-31.
And I don't remember too many of them.
But I didn't know Mr. Miller was at Lone Oak.
He was there a little while on Halloween night. One year they took his little Ford and set it up on store porch, and it took, I forgot how many people to set it off at the porch because they got it up between the posts. And he didn't have anything to go home in that night when he got back from Paducah.
Oh, man.
Yep. He had a time with that. Yeah, that's two. I can't remember. Oh, I remember vaguely some of them, but Will Howard Woodall's wife was one of my teachers. The lady that was murdered a few years back by, I think they accused her son of doing it, she was one of my teachers. Can't think of her name right now.
But you've reminded me of the stunts we used to pull on Halloween. Even when I was in college at Murray in the 40s, there were some Swires brothers, music majors from Pennsylvania, and they had a 29 Model A touring car. And on Halloween night, a bunch of the boys set that up on the steps of the library. Now, if you know that old library at Murray, what's now the Pogue Library, there was a kind of a big platform elevated to a height of maybe 8 or 10 feet. And they set that Model A up there and took wheels off of it. And that picture is in the yearbook for that year.
Well, I started to tell you that's what they did to Claude Miller's car, but it wasn't. It was to a buggy or a Surrey, I forgot now which. They took it on top of the school building. They had to take the wheels off to get it up there, and they hauled the body up there, and then they put the wheels back on it when they got up there, and there the thing stood right in the middle of the peak of that roof, and I don't know how they ever got it down.
So that's what we high school students majored in back in those days.
Right.
All right. What did you like most in school?
Well, I don't know. Some kids would say they like study hall best. No, I didn't like study hall best. I guess I like math and penmanship, probably two of the better subjects that I liked. I never had too much trouble with English, but I don't know that I ever had a great liking for it. But those were three things that I remember liking quite well and having a few problems with, and made school rather likable.
Now, you got out of high school about what year?
32.
1932. That was a terrible time to graduate.
Sure it was.
Couldn't have been a worse year in the Depression.
Depression was at its worst, I suppose.
Well, what in the world did you do?
Nothing. There was nothing to do. I did nothing. Well, I did. I think the next year went to school, but that year, well, that was just a slow down year.
But what you later went to college for chiropractic.
Yeah.
Now, how did you decide on that?
Well, my daddy was a chiropractor.
I see.
And persuaded me to follow in his footsteps. I did. And
where did you have to go off to school to get
in
there?
Indianapolis then.
Mhm.
The school in Indianapolis and in Chicago have since merged, and they are now in, all of it's in Chicago, but we still have, our group sort of keeps in touch up to the point that we can, which was, in the early 40s, the merger took place.
You have maybe a separate section of the Alumni
Mhm,
Association
mhm,
that sort of,
yeah. Yeah.
And those would be real pleasure times when you could get back and go and see the members of your class. When did you
They're getting
finish
thin.
chiropractic school?
They're getting thin. 36.
Well, now that was before World War II. Did that affect you in any way? No. Okay. Let's see. Where did you begin practice?
With my dad in Paducah.
In Paducah.
With
So,
him 4 years down there and then moved up here.
and then
Actually in March of 1940. Was here until about July of 42 and got those nice little greetings from the president. Enlisted in the Navy and spent the next 3.5 years with Uncle Sam. Came back in February of 46 and have been here ever since.
so you went into the Navy. Did you train at Great Lakes or?
Yes, Great Lakes. Got my basic training there and spent nearly a year there.
Mm-hmm.
Then, for some reason, I'll never know why, I spent a year, 6 months in recruiting duty at Louisville. Then I went to sea for a while.
Yeah. What kind of ship were you on?
On the destroyer, one of the new ones, the
Mhm.
better
tin,
ones,
the
they
old
said.
tin cans, they
Old
call
tin
them.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could be floating along on the ocean and you could feel those bulkheads, the thing weave back and forth. And you thought, oh, me, the next wave will get it. But they were rather substantial.
Now, of course, destroyer was a very versatile kind of ship. They assigned it to convoy duty, or it might be.
It was very expendable.
We didn't like to think about that,
No.
but there were always some that outflanking battleships and heavy cruisers, and they took the brunt of and maybe they would speed in toward a coastline and launch a few torpedoes or lob some 5-inch shells or something or other around. They said that the worst or the most monotonous duty was just convoying merchant ships back. Did you ever get into
I
it?
didn't get into any of that. Well, I didn't get into very little of it. I was assigned to the destroyer, stayed on it until it made its shakedown cruise to see what the bugs were in it, and brought it back to Brooklyn to have the bugs all worked out. And then I was transferred to the Marine Corps. And I spent the rest of my time with the Marine Corps, 2nd Marine Division, and stayed with them until.
Now,
They have no medical. See, they're a part of the Navy and have nothing but fighting force and everything else. Well, they do have their own quartermaster, but they don't have anything else in the way of special services. So, all of their medical department and medical supplies are furnished through the Navy.
Pharmacist mates and all that serve
From the Navy.
from the Navy.
They give us the Marine uniform, but we're Navy.
Mm-hmm. Well, did that mean you were in the South Pacific in it?
Yes. I went from San Diego to Marshall Islands and spent about a month there until we could get into Guam. They had to clean up the harbor so we could get in. Had a beautiful natural harbor at Guam. And then we went from there to our Pacific assignments, which was Saipan, and I spent, I guess, about a year there. We went from Saipan on the invasion of Okinawa, but we were not needed. We floated around, sailed about there for about 2 or 3 weeks until they decided they didn't need us, and we went back to Saipan, and that's where we were when the war ended. We went on to Japan after that.
So you got to see Japan before they. Well, they
About-
say join the Navy and see the
See the
world.
world. Well, we saw,
You saw part
we
of
saw
it.
part of it. Yeah, we saw Japan. So, yeah, when they sent us to Japan, we went into the Nagasaki Navy Yard,
Mhm.
which had been out of use for almost a year. They cleaned up the barracks, and that's where we lived. And I had enough time in to come home. I was there only about 30 days, but I don't know how long the rest of the group stayed, but we were permanent there for quite some time. And I visited while I was there. I saw Nagasaki and where the bomb landed. I didn't see Hiroshima, but I've read quite a bit about it and kept up with what happened there.
But the second atomic bomb,
Second,
Zitty,
yeah.
you were there.
I was, well, see, Tinian, the little island, just a companion island to Saipan,
Mhm.
is where all the B-29s were that were going to carry all that heavy stuff. So
Yeah.
we saw them going in and out, and probably saw the one that carried the big bomb, but we didn't know it.
Yeah. Let's see. I guess the first one was what, the Enola Gay, wasn't it?
That was Hiroshima,
Yeah.
Enola Gay.
Uh-huh.
That was the big one. That still scares
Well,
you to
those
think
were
about it.
some fearful times, and yet I guess in some ways exciting period. Now let's move away from that, unless you have some more you'd like to say about your Navy career. But when were you married?
We married on December the 22nd, 1940.
So you were married while you were in the Navy,
Oh yeah.
and you married whom?
Ann Gallimore.
Now, did the Gallimores live in Benton then?
No. They moved over here because I married.
I see.
No.
Now, where were they from?
Well, the Gallimores, old Dr. Gallimore is my father-in-law's father. He practiced medicine in Melbourne for almost 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
He died just after I came home out of service. But my father-in-law moved to Paducah in 1920, I believe it was. Worked for Standard Oil Company for a number of years. Owned the Standard Oil Company Commission Agency in Graves County from 1940 to 52, and then sold it in 52 and moved over here and ran the Western Auto Store until 1962 when he retired. And
I remember when he ran the Western Auto Store.
he moved over here in 1950. We came up here in 1940, bought this house in 1946, October 46.
So you've been right here much of the time. You've been in Marshall County.
Yep.
All right. How did you come to meet Ann? Would you mind going into that? Was it?
That's a rather short story, really. My brother and someone else was supposed to go visiting at their house, and the other person, whoever it was, backed out on him. The snow was coming down rather bad, and Bob wanted to go anyway, and I said, well, I'll go with you. I don't have anything to do, so I went that night. And coming home that night, we had to he was driving. He rolled the window down and managed to see to get home. If we'd had any sense, we'd stayed at home. But that was the first, well, it wasn't actually a date. I just went out to visit with him.
Mm-hmm.
But from that, we had our first date, and that was on December the 31st, 1939.
It made an impression on you. You
made an impression. As my old blacksmith who lived up the street a block from me, it made a great impression on me.
Yeah. Well, fine. So then you were married. Now, do you have any children?
I have two, one son and one daughter, Paul, who runs the book business,
Mm-hmm.
and Judy, who lives at Aurora, and is a combination of things. She's to some degree an artist. She's a glass blower, makes all sorts of glass items, and is interested in a lake in the lakeside lodge out there, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Works there quite a bit, and she's single. Paul's married, has 2 children, one of which is old enough to be married now and on her way to Alaska with her husband, who's a lieutenant in the Army. They'll be leaving us in the summer, but he's got a 3-year stretch or 3.5-year stretch to look forward to in Alaska ahead of him. Stacy's the youngest granddaughter, and she's graduating from high school this year and planning to go to Harding next year, I think.
So you're a grandfather.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Very much so.
Very much so.
Well, Doc, could you tell us something about your other interests now? I know you've been a chiropractor and so on. You've practiced here since about 1940, as I believe you said.
Mm-hmm.
You have always taken a lot of interest in church work, haven't you?
Well, I was forced into preaching.
Well, tell us about that.
Union Hill had a meeting arranged, and they had a different speaker every night, and Sid Darnell was bound and determined that I was going to use one of those nights, and despite all of my efforts to back out, he won.
Yeah.
And from that, the next year, that was 1955, during 56 and 57, I preached, I think, every other Sunday from Maple Hill, and then 58 through 61, I preached regularly for Walnut Grove. And then, since then, I have just done a little fill-in work, mostly with the Benton Church in the educational program until 6 years ago when I got old enough to retire.
Well, so Sid Darnell just kind of wouldn't let you say no.
That's right. He was very persuasive. I said, no way.
There was a fellow named Cutworm Reed, one of the world's greatest telephone men, and he told me one time that a fellow died and left him that job, and he never did like him. He was joking, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't die and leave you the job, but he just kind of squeezed you into it.
Squeezed me into it, that's right.
Well, I imagine after you got rolling and enjoyed the work, let's say, at Walnut Grove and various places, you were glad it happened.
Glad, that's right. Enjoy it.
Can you think of any, it seems to me that I was reading a history not too long ago, and it said something about many of the programs that got started and work on improving the building and so on at Walnut Grove, that you were the leader in that. Does that give you a great deal of satisfaction, I would guess?
Well, they built a new building while I was there, but I don't know that I had a great deal to do with it.
Well, modesty is becoming, I suppose. Now, here at Benton, you served a good many years as educational director, didn't you?
I did.
And someone told me that you'd done about as much after you retired as you did before. You just kept right on working, except they didn't pay you the same way.
Well, I did for about 5 years after I retired. Well, my interest there went first to the bookstore. Actually, when I saw what really could be done and what was needed in educational programs and what was lacking so many places, and after having visited some stores and having seen some of the things that were available that were lacking in this area, we really started just trying to stock some things that teachers could use profitably, and that was it. But some of the congregations in the area said, if you'll stock Sunday school materials and so forth, we'll buy from you. So that's what we did, and that's what it developed from. And today, it's just about all the three of us can have. We're supposed to be retired, but Ann and I work just about as hard as Paul does. The store really belongs to him. We sold it to him 7 years ago now.
But he can't handle all the work by himself.
Oh, no. So we're here, and we answer the phone and take care of a lot of the orders that come in.
I assume that you have a lot of customers outside of Marshall County.
Oh, yeah. We have customers in Pennsylvania and Tennessee and West Virginia.
Well, I was going to ask
Illinois,
if you,
and Indiana, Missouri, Mississippi. A lot of people who have worked in the area.
They leave. They
leave
keep
and
buying.
They found out we had good service, gave them good service, and they just, when they put us to the test, we came through, and so they stayed with us. So we picked up several good accounts that way, and that's the way to do business. Service is what makes business go. Giving people service. Every month we get when he pays his church account up in Illinois, the old fellow says, "We sure do appreciate your good service. Never fails, every month." Well, that makes you feel good. Makes you feel like you're doing something worthwhile for somebody. And that's what makes the world go round and keeps people happy, I guess.
Well, you know, this half hour is just flitted, and it's gotten down to where we don't have too much time left, possibly a couple of more minutes. Can you think of any funny stories or anything particular you'd like to say before we have to wrap it up and call it a day?
Well, this isn't funny, but this just happened today. I stopped down at Brothers to eat dinner, and a young lady and her, well, not so young now, I guess she's in her middle 40s, and her mother, who was quite a bit older. And the younger one made a remark that tragedy in her life had occurred, and I had, at that occasion, sent her an appropriate card and note, which she still treasured very much and had helped her greatly at that particular time. And those things make you feel good, make you feel like, well, I've done really good along the way. In one of the things that I've always felt that I tried to live by was that little bit of a poem that I want to live in a house with the side of the road and be a friend to man. And I've tried to do that.
Yeah. Edgar A. Guest.
And I think it pays off in the long run. I think it helps.
Well, very good. We certainly appreciate your allowing us to come by. Dr. Claude Morrow, Doctor of Chiropractic, Bible teacher, preacher, elder, educational director, and bookstore worker now.
Yeah.
Maybe I started to say owner, but he sold that to his son. And grandfather. I don't know if I've gotten nearly all of your titles or not.
That's enough.
For now, that will do. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our broadcast today from Mayfield Highway in Benton with Doc Morrow. This is Ray Mofield. We return you now to our studio.